This is another digital way to connect with everybody, or we can have a look at the chat window and see the names of our colleagues and friends. From folks here from Indian Association Business Council, we have folks here from Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Irish Chamber of Commerce, Singapore, Sing Cham, Brit Cham friends as well, TEC, French Tech. It's amazing. We'll also be recording the session, so we can have access to that. So we'd welcome everybody to take next 30 seconds to just write in the chat window, just one sentence, what made you join today's session? I think the best learning is to read the comments and learn from each other. Very interesting. So while everybody is typing what motivated you to join today's session, I'd like to hand over to Rahul to please welcome our dear speaker and today's session, and then we'll take it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nishta. And welcome, Mr. Chatterjee. It's my privilege to be introducing Mr. Chatterjee to the audience. Mr. Chatterjee took office of the United Nations Resident Coordinator in China in Jan 2021, and he is the designated representative of the UN Secretary General. He presented his letter of credence to President Xi Jinping in April 2021. Mr. Chatterjee has more than 25 years of experience in international cooperation, sustainable development, humanitarian coordination, peace and security in United Nations and the Red Cross movement. He has served in many fragile and war-torn countries all over the world. A 3-time TEDx speaker, he is a regular opinion contributor on humanitarian and development issues for a range of journals, which include Newsweek, Los Angeles Times, Reuters, Huffington Post, Forbes, CNN, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, you name it. He is also, of late, has published in mainstream Chinese journals as well. Mr. Chatterjee holds a master's degree in public policy from Princeton University in the United States of America. So looking forward to your talk, Mr. Chatterjee. I'm sure looking at the response of the audience, you can see there's a tremendous interest in what you have to say on SDG. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to join all of you today. And I want to first start, Nishta and Rahul, to thank you for this invitation. And I want to thank the Indian Association of Business Council for this invitation to speak at your Leadership Talk series. Many of you are business leaders who have already been engaged or are interested in doing business in China or with Chinese partners, but may or may not be familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, our priorities in China, and how business matters in the process of achieving them. So today I would kind of frame my conversation around, firstly, what the Sustainable Development Goals are. Secondly, how the UN is supporting the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in China. I will refer to the Sustainable Development Goals as the SDGs as I carry forward this conversation with all of you. And what are our strategic priorities? Thirdly, some examples of private sector engagement in the SDGs. Fourthly, looking ahead and why a new form of multilateralism needs to be forged through public-private partnerships, which is key to addressing the multiple global challenges we face today. So let me start firstly with the introduction of the SDG. Now, at the heart of the 2030 agenda for the sustainable development adopted by all member states in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, is a collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The 17 SDGs are an urgent call to action by all countries, developing and developed, in a global partnership. The SDGs recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve public health and education, reduce inequality, spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and our forests. The SDGs essentially are the North Star of international development. And this is what the UN does in bringing all 993 member states of the United Nations Committee. And how is the United Nations therefore supporting the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in China, and what are our strategic priorities? We established our presence here in 1979, and over the last 40 years, the UN has been a trusted partner of China and has witnessed the profound economic and social transformations that have taken place since the introduction of the reforms in the late 70s. In the 4 decades since, the role of the UN in China has shifted from a traditional donor to that of a partner of government and relevant stakeholders, including business, providing technical support in line with their national development priorities. Now, as China transitions from prioritizing rapid economic growth to a more balanced pursuit of high-quality development, development that is innovation-driven, coordinated, green, open, and shared by all. The UN in China recognizes the synergy between these priorities and the 2030. Now, in response to China's new development paradigm and following extensive consultations, the UN in China is undergoing a new cycle of cooperation with the government of China through what is called the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2021 to 2025. I took over my role as the United Nations Resident Coordinator at the start of the new cooperation framework, which was January 2021. The period covered by the UN Cooperation Framework is contemporaneous with China's own 14th five-year plan. The Cooperation Framework will support China in realizing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and will also help China to respond to new priorities and challenges presented as 3 overarching areas. Firstly, people and prosperity. Secondly, the planet. Thirdly, partnerships. Now, under each priority area, we have identified specific high-level outcomes. I want to take some time to explain, for example, outcome 5 of the partnership priority area and an example of our work to deliver on this outcome. Outcome 5, China's international financing, investments, business engagements, including through connectivity initiatives, programs, and projects that contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals in China and in partner countries. To provide some context, China has steadily increased its international development financing and investments through bilateral and multilateral cooperation. In 2020, China's foreign direct investment outflow reached approximately $153.7 billion and became the largest in the world, covering 189 countries and regions, as 28,000 Chinese investors have set up 45,000 enterprises across the globe. Now, against this background, the priority for the United Nations in China is to leverage China's international development cooperation engagements and contribute towards advancing progress on the critical global agendas such as the SDGs and the Paris Agreement on climate change. And at the same time, adding value, contributing best practices, and ensuring compliance to international norms and standards. So to achieve this, the United Nations in China support includes, firstly, advising state-owned corporations, enterprises, private-owned enterprises, and civil society organizations on applying environmental, social, and governance principles and sustainable business models. Secondly, supporting regulatory authorities and national development banks in informing decision-making on investment programs to support that they are socially, environmentally, economically sustainable, as well as risk-informed. This support is made possible through my colleagues who are co-located actually with all of you in Shanghai, which is also called the United Nations Global Compact. Now, the UN Global Compact was launched by the former UN Secretary General, Mr. Kofi Annan, in the year 2000. And it is our flagship agency, which is promoting responsible business practices and is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, supported by nearly 16,000 corporate members from across 160 countries. During the past 22 years, the United Nations Global Compact has assisted the private sector in finding entry points to partnerships that help to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs and better engage in the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, which includes human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. One good example of our work is to deliver on this outcome is the so-called Eco-Loo Box for All, a healthcare pilot project, which was implemented by the UN Global Compact in China. Through converting cargo containers provided and designed by public and private partners, the Eco-Loo Box for All provides an affordable, replicable, and an eco-friendly biotoilet solution for people in poverty living in countries along the Belt and Road Initiative and the world's least developed regions, contributing to various sustainable development goals, and in particular SDG 3, which is on good health and well-being, SDG 6, which is on clean water and sanitation, and SDG 13, which is on climate action. Now, in October 2021, the first phase of the pilot project was successfully installed and put into service in villages in southwest China. My understanding from our colleagues at the Global Compact is that the local beneficiaries have welcomed the project. The second phase of the pilot project is now in incubation, aiming to put into service to at least one country of the BRI. Now, this pilot project is part of the action platform on sustainable infrastructure for the Belt and Road Initiative to accelerate the SDGs, set up in response to the appeal made by nearly 40 heads of states in a joint communique of the second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation that we also call on all market players in the Belt and Road Cooperation to fulfill their corporate social responsibility and follow the principles of the UN Global Compact. If you're interested in learning more about this project, please get in touch with the Global Compact colleagues, which is led by my very able and capable colleague, Mang Liu, who's also attending the session today. So today's world faces a series of tests in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate emergency, conflicts, and rising inequalities. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity faces stark choices as these crises continue to reverse the global progress on the SDGs. It is abundantly clear that multilateralism and international cooperation are our best hope of tackling shared challenges. But the achieving of the Sustainable Development Goal requires a more networked and fit for purpose form of multilateralism, bringing in all sectors of society from all member states through new public-private partnerships playing a critical role. Let me talk about my own personal experience while I served as the United Nations Resident Coordinator, and prior to that, the UN Population Fund representative in Kenya. Kenya faced one of the highest maternal death rates in the world. Now, tackling this challenge with the support from the government of China, the UN family sought in a way to break the orthodoxy by bringing 5 companies, Huawei from China, Merck from the US, GlaxoSmithKline from the UK, Philips from the Netherlands, and Safaricom from Kenya to partner with us and with the government of Kenya to address maternal mortality in the 6 highest burden counties. In less than 3 years, this partnership led to a 1/3 reduction in maternal mortality in these counties, with progress in many countries would have generally taken on something like this 10 to 15 years. This modality of partnership also unlocked about $15 million from a trust fund to generate sustainable development impact through telehealth infrastructure. This program has now gone to approximately $250 million on a telemedicine enterprise, which is taking place as we speak in Kenya. 2017, as a result of this, we got invited to the World Economic Forum in Davos to showcase a partnership that we spoke about, but made it actually happen at the ground level. The potential of these forms of public-private partnership for development is unlimited. Currently, the UN in China is proposing a Sustainable Development Goal partnership platform that can leverage the experiences and resources of China to promote rural revitalization, agribusiness development, and other priority areas for the SDGs in China and perhaps even in Africa. The UN in China is also exploring new opportunities to harness our convening power for public-private partnerships with stakeholders to create meaningful engagement, exchange knowledge and technologies, and build synergies and coherence to achieve results. We will also maintain our strong partnership with the government of China. Last month, I was honored to have a bilateral meeting with China's Foreign Minister, His Excellency Mr. Wang Yi. And at that bilateral meeting, we discussed the importance of the UN-China partnership in the face of the setbacks to the SDGs during a time of shared global challenges. We also discussed the proposed Global Development Initiative and its potential to accelerate global progress in realizing the promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As my boss, Mr. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said, and I quote, "Discussions through the Global Development Initiative can help move the needle on development progress across all countries." End of quote. I made a commitment to Foreign Minister Wang Yi, saying that as the UN resident coordinator in China, I intend to marshal the full intellectual capacity of the entire UN family here in China and globally to ensure that China's Global Development Initiative becomes a global best practice and matches all necessary international norms and standards. You will realize that the SDGs are not simply lofty ideals for governments, but a formidable instrument for the private sector to unlock new markets and the longevity of their operations. Ultimately, sustainability is good for humanity as it is good for business. Last month, I was invited to speak to the UN Global Compact Leadership Summit. I was encouraged to see the panelists agreed that multilateralism, especially through public-private partnership, is essential for global recovery and that business can play an important role in achieving the SDGs. The summit attracted close to 12,000 attendees from across 160 countries. More than 10% of these attendees were from China and India. It is clear that the importance of public-private partnerships and business engagement is increasingly being acknowledged by stakeholders all across the world. I'm happy to report that nearly 1,000 businesses and non-business organizations from India and China have made a commitment to the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact. But we need many more companies and organizations to join, to commit, to act, to influence, and to change course. We encourage you to take this initiative to meaningfully embed the SDGs into your business strategies and operations. We can help here. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by quoting a well-known Chinese proverb, and I quote, "Do not fail to do good no matter how petty the deed. Do not engage in evil no matter how trivial the deed." End of quote. Whatever the size or scale of your business, your organization can help accelerate the SDGs. Your leadership decisions in adapting to meet the SDGs can enhance the brand trust and investor support. With less than 8 years left to achieve the SDGs in this decade of action, the UN family here in China stands fully ready to support your efforts. I hope that today's discussion can be a catalyst for more dialogue and action for us to advance new collaborations and realize the 2030 Agenda. I'll just take a minute to make you understand the demographic potential that we are seeing unraveling in Asia. If you look at the subcontinent, in Africa, where the median age is 18. Africa's population will be 2.5 billion by 2050. By 2030, agribusiness in Africa will be approximately $1 trillion worth. The consumer market will expand to about $2.5 trillion. The affordable housing space will go to about $700 billion. And this is just in the next 8 years. The blue economy that we've been discussing can go to $6 to $7 trillion. How do we then, as the United Nations family, be a convener, a connector, and a catalyst to enhancing that new potential? The Marshall Plan took Europe out of poverty after the two great wars. It created new markets in Europe. It helped underpin the creation of the European Union. This is precisely the scale and ambition of a Marshall Plan 2.0 that we need where the public sector and the private sector and governments and non-governmental organizations using multilateral platforms advance development, because advancing development not only advances our own humanity, but also advances sustainability of our enterprises. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Everybody, we can also use reaction, the Zoom reaction, to give any feedback. So thank you so much, Mr. Chatterjee. We have a few questions coming in. We encourage more folks to reflect. We can have an open conversation. Let's take the opportunity for directly getting answers from Mr. Chatterjee. Let's welcome here Shameen. Shameen, please, you can unmute and ask and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chatterjee. My name is Shameen Prashantham. I'm professor at China-Europe International Business School, which is a business school here in Shanghai. And in fact, we have a small campus in Ghana. And I've been following your LinkedIn posts and so on since you've arrived. I've also been in touch with Meng Liu, who we actually hope to have on campus in March for a talk, but the lockdown means we will postpone this. So I'm very intrigued about the prospect of transferring knowledge from China to Africa, for example, in terms of poverty alleviation. But it's also sometimes challenging to find ways to establish the applicability of this knowledge. Because when I used to teach in our Ghana campus and gives examples from China, in some cases involving government involvement to promote innovation, they would actually get demoralized rather than encouraged and say, we don't have those kinds of governments here. And then I'd had to give them examples from other parts of the world to show what is still possible. But I'm very intrigued about any specific examples you've identified in the year plus you've been here of what can be usefully transferred and mechanisms to do that, especially now that travel is not so easy and so on. Thank you.
So let me take that. I think that's a very important question. I'll give you an example in terms of a context. In Kenya, we have the famous port of Lamu, which is on the east coast, and Ethiopia is landlocked. And during the time of President Kibaki, a decision was taken that we needed to open up pathways for Ethiopia to connect. My predecessor, a very capable resident coordinator, was Ethiopian in Kenya. And I was then in Kenya, and we started a dialogue with a couple of companies, including the Africa Development Bank and the European Union. The road construction had started. Northern part of Kenya, so I'll give you an example. To go from Nairobi to the northern part of Kenya, which is on the border with Ethiopia, it would take anywhere from 7 to 8 days because just poor infrastructure. So the European Union, the Africa Development Bank, the governments of Kenya and Ethiopia came together, and a Chinese private company was hired to build this road. Not only was this road built on record time, but it was built on budget. What it goes to show is where the UN can actually be a catalyst for these kinds of unorthodox partnerships. It is if you can look it up. If you do Kenya Moyale Ethiopia road, it looks like an autobahn, out of nowhere. So this is where the new value proposition is going to be, which means that, for example, the UN resident coordinator in Ghana, or the UN resident coordinator in Ethiopia, or the UN resident coordinator in Senegal could actually bring together the might of the country team, which is composed of 25 to 30 UN agencies. We have the finest minds that are economists and social policy experts in advising the government to make the best possible choices. So, for example, I'll give you another concrete example. In Kenya, we were able to bring the British Chambers of Commerce, the Kenyan Chambers of Commerce, and the Chinese Chambers of Commerce together on a joint program. And this was done at the residence of the Chinese ambassador in Kenya. And it turned into a unique partnership because regardless, I know that we are also mindful of the overall geopolitics, but that geopolitics is not necessarily applicable to business. And this is where we need the leadership of business and the leadership of the UN working with partner countries to bring new relationships together. As I said, the new Marshall Plan, of which I call the 2.0 of progress in the world, is going to be public-private partnerships. Governments are seriously under-resourced with the arrival of the pandemic. That level of financing is no longer available. We have to be far more agile and ambidextrous in identifying new forms of financing. And I'll conclude by saying, before I left Kenya, we were able to identify $35 billion for industrialization in Kenya. And this was done by the UN. So the potential is limitless. What we are limited by is our imagination. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Limited by imagination. Thank you so much. Great question from Shameen. We'd like to invite Barry. Thank you, Barry, from the Irish Chambers as well, our friends.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for a great presentation and spending time with us today. And thank you to the Indian Business Association for inviting the Irish Chamber to get involved. My first question was just very briefly, because I work in advertising and communications, so a lot of my businesses are embracing sustainability strategies long-term to help build their brands and drive business development. So one question is sustainability good for business or is it a hindrance? And will people that benefit from a sustainability platform or vision be the existing businesses that exist now, or is it only going to be a benefit to new technologies and new businesses moving forward?
Thank you, Barry. And just to say that, Ireland has always been a very consistent supporter of multilateralism, one of my strongest partners actually in Kenya. And we had several Irish businesses that were working with us in a full range of activities, which included agriculture, and which is a particular strength. And my successor, who's also a Princeton alum, is Irish. So thank you for that question. Let me give you a story, and this is the story of Unilever in India. Unilever established its first factory in Bombay in 1906. That time, India was a colony of the British. The population was about between 250 to 350 million people. We were very, very poor as a nation state. But Unilever hung in there. They saw the prospect of sustainability happen. The prospect, some leadership was there. They could look into the future. 100 years down the line, now, 2 out of 3 Indians out of a population of 1.3 billion uses a Unilever product. They have complete market capitalization on a range of products and services in it. That is sustainability. Their business model has worked at such scale. It's one of the largest employers. The leadership is all mostly Indian, but it's fascinating to see how corporate integrated into that horizon. This is what a lot of the Chinese companies that I've seen in Kenya, for example, they get into the DNA, and that is precisely what needs to happen. What we have is a human capital deficiency in Africa, where we don't have the plumbers, the masons, the carpenters, those skill sets that you need in place where construction, etc. is needed. So what we are trying to do is making sure that the young people in Africa have 3 E's accompanying them. First is education and the skills. Secondly is the empowerment and making sure more and more women join the labor force, which is what also led to China's dramatic progress, was close to 60%. It had a track record of having more women in the labor force than most of Europe did. And the third is finding gainful employment, and finding jobs must be at the center of this. So whatever corporations are thinking, as you're looking at partnerships, the biggest headache for the political leadership in Africa is the youth bulge, where over 70% of the population is less than 30, but massive levels of unemployment. 10 to 12 million Africans look for work every year, of which barely about 1 million jobs are created. So that potential is massive. So therefore, the only way you will achieve it is through sustainability and a vision into the future. And that is why I gave you the example of Unilever, which goes back so far back. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. We'd love to welcome Srini. Srini, to you.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Chatterjee. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed. As the recent past president of World Design Organization, we adopted the UN SDG when they changed the nomination from Millennium Goals to a Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. So we have been practicing and promoting industrial design concepts to the global design community. And I'm a recent entrant to Shanghai, just barely 3.5 months from San Francisco. And we followed the goals number 3, 6, 7, 9, 11, 12, especially the responsible consumption and partnership, which is the goal number 17. So despite all the agencies in the UN pushing and the organizations like WDO pushing the designers to think of sustainable design practices, I believe that 8 years is too short for us to achieve any meaningful, measurable results from the global moment. So do you believe that, people always wonder what is beyond 2030? Will the UN extend the goal from 2030 to, I know Africa has a 2050 goal and some other countries have, Finland has 2040. So what is your thought on how do we stretch? This should not stop. I don't think we want to call this something else. Hopefully we'll extend the life of SDGs to beyond 2030. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Srini, and a very sensible and a pragmatic question. So if you look at the first 5 goals of the SDGs, those were carried forward from the Millennium Goals. That is the unfinished business. Goal number 1 on zero poverty. Goal number 2 on ending hunger. Goal number 3 on universal health coverage. Goal number 4 on quality education. Goal number 5 on gender equality. This was not achieved, and therefore were brought into the SDGs. In 2015, the world had a dream, and they thought this was doable. And that is why, getting the entire world, getting governments to agree to a set of goals is a very, very challenging task. Everybody has different priorities. Each country, the least developed countries, the small island states, the rich countries, the developed countries, all have different perspectives and opinions on this. But to find consensus around these 17 goals and the key targets that were set there was, an act of magic as well, of where the real value proposition of the United Nations really is. The United Nations itself is changing, otherwise I tell my colleagues this, we ourselves have a choice. Either we are dynamic or we become dinosaurs. So by 2030, I hope that we will not be dinosaurs, but that we would be kind of elevating this conversation to a whole new level. So the fact of the matter is, COVID has taken us back, hugely back. I mean, what we are witnessing is not just the flu pandemic of which happened from 1918 to 1920, but we are also seeing a financial crisis that rivals the Great Depression of the 1930s. So it is clear that we will have to, and that's why I often quote the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed when she says that you have to learn to flip the orthodoxy, and we have to find new avenues. How do we use big data, technology, and innovation to leapfrog development? This is precisely what we did in Kenya on reducing maternal deaths. Srini, if I were to take this to Bihar, if we were to attempt to reduce maternal mortality ratios in Bihar in the late 70s, it would have taken us anywhere from 15 to 20 years, just by 1/3, not ending, just by 1/3. But now, in remote parts of Kenya, and these are places that border Somalia, we were able to do it. That is precisely because we found the right or the sweet spot where big data technology and innovation could converge, where Merck saw a value, where GlaxoSmithKline saw a value. I mean, I had a huge amount of pushback from within the UN system saying, oh my God, how can you be doing business with pharmacies? You know, they are all, pharmaceutical companies. They are all, profit related. And I said, no, profit related is not a bad thing. In fact, we took the language of corporate social responsibility out of our cooperation framework with these companies. And we say we all come in with our comparative advantages. But what we will give you is a stable platform where the UN is here. It's going to be there in that country like we've been here since 1979. You know, we will continue to be here. We will metamorphosize. We will become different in different ways and shape. But the point is we are there. And this is where the public-private partnership can really go to scale. And what we need is no more pilots, but an ambition that looks at scale, an ambition that looks at real transformation, precisely that same ambition that the Marshall Plan had in Europe. If the Marshall Plan had not unlocked Europe's potential, Europe would have still been pretty backward. But what it did was it connected all of you. So therefore, I will continue to champion the importance of making sure that we have solid public health, because it reminded us that with the weakness of public health, how economies fail. I mean, this is the famous words of Herodotus, the Greek philosopher, who said that, without health, we have no wealth, no strength, no economics. So therefore, it's reminded us of that. Next is we need a green economic growth, a low carbon economic growth. What is it that we could start doing now? President Xi Jinping has confirmed China's own ambition of reaching carbon peaking by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. How do we help make that happen? How do corporations from Ireland and India and China and the US and Great Britain come together to look at mega programs? Because no single company or entity can do that. How do we come up with a business plan which is not just about Kenya, but about the whole Horn of Africa, where the population will be 750 million by 2050, and the market growth is expected to be in double digit. In fact, Ethiopia had already surpassed 12% GDP growth in 2019, but the COVID pandemic has set us back. So I'm not going to see the end of the 2030 agenda. It will just take another form. But that is why the primacy of the private sector is going to be absolutely mission critical. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. But if I may ask you to share with us, is there any dialogue going on within the UN to extend because we need to reiterate the SDGs in some form or the other, and there's nobody other than UN which can do at a global level. Is there any dialogue? I mean, otherwise, of course, we all are going to extend it in one way or the other. Can you share some of that information?
Every September, the UN meets at the UN General Assembly. So I assume, so the SDG started in 2015. So there is a regular discussion which continues to. So the UN General Assembly happens in September. I'm sure there'll be discussions which will be taking place over there. But the point is, we should not already be cutting ourselves short saying that we can't do it by 2030. Why not? It was, who was it? It was George Bernard Shaw who said that, some men see things as they are and ask why, and some dream things that never was and ask why not. So this perhaps is that why not moment to try and see what we can do, how far we can get.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. Really appreciate it.
That's wonderful. It gives a good segue into, you just mentioned about health being a very important goal, and it's a segue to the question from Nayung. I've known her for years, and she's doing an amazing job with her startup to create products and services for the elderly target audience in China. So to you.
Hello. Oh, I don't see myself here, but I guess you guys can see me. Hello, Sid. Very nice to see you here, and very happy to see your passion and energy. Great talk. One of the sustainability goals, health for all, although it's not talked a lot about, but we are dealing with the reality that by 2050, China will have 500 million people over 60. What is their health means it is their right to live a valued life. And in order to do that, all the stakeholders around the elderly care, whether it's care workers, family members, or volunteers, they need to have competence so that they provide the right support for the seniors, so that they can have a non-premature death. I mean, which is happening quite often. So anyway, as a senior care platform and content company, we would very much like to have an opportunity to train the volunteers around the country who would like to support the seniors. I believe it's also one of the goals of the Chinese government, who would like to promote the volunteers, time bank system, and community volunteers, younger seniors be trained to support the older seniors, and so on. So that's my proposal, and looking for opportunity to collaborate.
Good to see you again. So geriatric healthcare is the future. Geriatric health business is the future. So why I talked about where India, the Southeast Asian countries, Africa, these are countries which are poised to reap what I would call a demographic dividend. On the other hand, you're looking at all of Western Europe, the US, Canada, China, most of the Asian tigers, which are going into what is called a demographic echo. And a demographic echo basically means an aging population. And I want to put this once more into context. And why is this connected to what you're saying? So Sweden and Kenya had the same population in 1956, 7 million. Kenya's population today is 49 million. Sweden's population is 10.8 million. That is the velocity of growth now for the whole of Africa. So Africa's population will be 2.5 billion from the current 1.2 billion that we have now. So by 2050, it will be 2.5 billion. India's total fertility rate has plateaued, so it is coming to replacement level, which is at about 2.1. In Africa, the total fertility rate is at approximately between 4 and 6. So you're looking at a vastly aging population and a very young population. How do we bring this all together? So the frontiers of change is not going to happen in nation states alone. Again, geriatric care, just as employment for young people, has to be a multilateral approach. Where will you find the healthcare providers? What kind of free movement of goods, services, and people are we going to see happen? And this is where it becomes very, very interesting. Probably, I mean, in your own country, South Korea, there's been a policy discussion about introducing robos at the household level, so that the elderly can be taken care of because the children have gone off to study or they've got their own lives, and we are becoming increasingly nuclear families. But a robo is still a robo, and we will continue to need geriatric healthcare, the services and all that is needed. So if I was in the space of business, I would be looking at a complete ecosystem of healthcare provision for the elderly, which is not just training of human capital, but to bring in elements of artificial intelligence, from drones to the capacity of blood tests to be done, drugs to be sent across, to be done rapidly, because we will not be seeing that kind of young people available in many of these countries. In fact, our prediction is that by 2050, China's own population will peak at about 1 billion. So and demographics is a natural form. There's nothing unusual about it. So the countries will go up and countries will go down. But the opportunity this provides in terms of strengthening the healthcare ecosystem is massive. And for example, we did an assessment when I started the public-private partnership in Kenya back in 2014. McKinsey came in to support us pro bono because they just found this whole idea really exciting. They never thought that the UN and the private sector could actually work together, and the UN not see the private sector as merely a fund provider or a donor, which is what the UN normally does. but to look at competitive advantages of bringing it together. By 2016, we had a study done that the healthcare business in Africa would reach $400 billion by 2030. And I'm talking about preventative healthcare. I'm not talking about market forces that will naturally bring in tertiary care. I mean, if you look at India's healthcare model, the preventative healthcare model is highly under-resourced, whereas the tertiary healthcare, you have the best hospitals, etc., because it's market-driven. The potential of investment in the preventative care is massive. That applies to China. That's the conversation I'm having with the Chinese government. We are seeing increasing levels of non-communicable diseases, which includes hypertension and diabetes and all those things. And those are the major causes for old age-related morbidity. So once again, if we can actually plug into the public health ecosystem, which looks at the contours and the entire architecture from cradle to grave, we are actually in a very good place to think out of the box in imaginative responses, both to deal with young people and to deal with the elderly. Over to you.
If I may just add one small thing, is that most of the care workers who are coming into this sector, they come from the lowest strata of the society. So in a way, by giving them skills and the opportunity for professional work, we are also working with the goal number one, poverty alleviation.
You're absolutely right. I mean, in Kenya, I saw the real value of getting a bank into a person's phone. I mean, China's Alipay system or the WeChat Pay system is no comparison to what Kenya started off with in 2008. It is number 2 in the world in cashless transactions. It basically put a bank into a person's hand because most people, poverty levels are extremely high there. A lot of them are unbanked, but it changed people's lives. So what you're talking about in terms of skills, there is nothing like a low or a high strata. It is about the kind of skills we give them. And those skills will automatically, push them onto another level. I will recall, my Indian friends will understand this. I got 43% in my 10th class board exams. So my mother had a shock. She actually passed out when she heard my results. And I said, actually, I passed all the subjects. My headmaster suggested to me that my future is probably in the space of plumbing. So I came and told my dad. I said, my headmaster said that I should look at plumbing. And then my father nearly passed out. And, there was a lot of anxiety in the family. But I realized that perhaps if I had become a plumber and gone to Europe, I probably would have been one of the highest paid people going around. I still recall in Copenhagen, we had a plumber come over. In an hour, he charged us 250 euros for just turning 2 knobs on one side, which I should have known myself. So if we can, again, reinforce the message of dignity in labor, I think that is going to be crucial. And this is where businesses have a huge opportunity to say, listen, you could be a plumber or a mason or a carpenter or a healthcare worker. Your role is crucial. And that comes from leadership. Over to you.
Well said. Such a brilliant question and conversation going on. Thank you so much. My son happens to be online, which is very rare for such talks. And I think he will really resonate with this example you gave about the exam result. So he keeps still reminding me, let's focus on the effort. Let's not focus on the result, Mama. So yeah, thank you. A quick one. We have about 10 minutes. So we'll take 3 questions more from the audience. And we'd love for all of you to please share one takeaway in the chat window, one takeaway you're walking away today. What inspired you? Would like to invite now Dr. Kashinath Sahu to ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Charity. It is great to have you here and listen to your brilliant talk about it. I've been following since my PhD. I've been following the UN activities globally. Of course, I'm not in that field right now. I'm totally in the corporate world. by my interest, out of my interest, I keep watching your activities. My question is
Sorry, Ashina, could you just hold? I can't hear you because there's another sound coming. So I'm not hearing your question.
I was in office, so somebody else also is in, having some.
Maybe
Okay.
Nishita, you can read the question. I think that's
Dr.
easier.
Kashinath will help you read it. So hopefully it will
Right.
help. So if you could go on mute, thank you. So the question is, with the present geopolitical scenario and regime change in different parts of the world, how optimistic is UN to halve world's poverty in the next 8 years? Is it really possible?
I think so. I mean, look, friends, look at China. 1979, China's per capita GDP was $180. Many countries in Asia, many countries in Africa had a higher per capita GDP. Look at many countries in South Korea, the Asian tigers, from where they have come from. There are three keys that are crucial to this. One is political will, the second is right public policies, and the third is new partnerships. And how do we capture what I called earlier, the big data, the technology, and the innovation to fast track this? So I tell I have a very strong connection here with the African ambassadors group, 54 ambassadors. They treat me as their own because I constantly advocate and champion for them, simply because I realize what the potential of that continent. And I say to them, what China did in 4 decades, most African countries can do it in 10 years. How do we embrace the technology and the innovation which is out there? But it does need political leadership. It does need the right public policy. It does need new partnerships to help make it happen. Frankly, when I was at Princeton University, I did a comparative study of the economies of South Korea, India, Nigeria, and Brazil. As a matter of fact, there's a professor of mine there called Atul Kohli, and you should read his book on state-directed development, Atul Kohli, Princeton University. And so my study was on that. And what we realized was state-directed development is crucial to lift people out of poverty. You need a strong state to push it. If you look at the model of the Asian tigers, it happened there. So what we are saying in African countries is we need leadership, the political will to move the needle there. And the UN will continue to work with these countries. So the UN country teams, which are in all the 54 African countries, working in lockstep to realize their development ambition. We would not have succeeded with that maternal health program had the president of Kenya not put his personal signature and stamp on it. That was where the political will came from. The rest of it fell into place very quickly. Over to you.
Thank you. Obviously, the increase and the response on questions is very, very encouraging. We'll be very quick with that. Let's invite Mukesh. Thank you, Mukesh.
Hi, Dr. Siddharth. I think my question was that too many satellites are getting added, and it's time that our space rules have not been updated. So I'm a great fan of the UN SDGs, the 17, but I don't know if they're covered there, but is there any plan to add an 18th one for space asset management? Your views, please.
I mean, the UN has a specialized agency that does deal with space. And I reckon that these are conversations which have already started to happen. Not every country, not all 193 countries have satellites up in space, but those are conversations which are already taking place. The whole issue of space debris is again, conversations which are happening over there. Today you have the private sector, which is already launching rockets into space, and we are looking at space tourism as a potential to happen into the near future. Again, look, those are issues which, just like the way aviation is managed, just like the way shipping is managed, so is, I think this is going to take more and more priority with the UN Space Agency, which is working with all the member states. That's what the UN does. So a good point, and I'm sure that those discussions are happening at some point or the other, and perhaps by 2030, because of the saturation, and then we will also be seeing, multiple millions of drones, not just delivering pizza, but delivering healthcare to the elderly. And in Rwanda, for example, with an American academic from Harvard University, a program started between the UN and the government of Rwanda and this academic of introducing drones to send health supplies to the remotest parts of Rwanda. And today, in a span of 45 to 50 minutes, you have the most essential drugs and blood sent to places where there's no infrastructure. So I see all this will need to be managed. But again, I see these as incredible business opportunities coming up. And the return of investment in places like Africa, India, all these places is the volume and not the scale. And this is exactly the conversation I had once with the president of Merck, who's a dear friend of mine. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Last two before we do the closing of the session. Frank, welcome, Frank.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And Nishta, thank you for inviting me, and thank you to have the opportunity to listen to your excellent contribution. So my name is Frank. I'm originally from Belgium. I'll keep it short, and I've been in China for 15 years. I work for a logistics and industrial packaging company, and we have started our journey into sustainability. And I'm leading that journey for the whole group, so for all our business units. And basically, I've done a lot of research, and I basically have the UN SDG goals. We identify the materiality topics which are important for our business, for our stakeholders. We link them with our initiatives internally, and then we do the non-sustainability, a non-financial report or sustainability report, which we benchmark with our customers. And what I noticed is that there is a lot of different reporting. You have the GRI reporting, you have the TFSTD, you have the Greenhouse Protocol, and also now the EU has issued an initiative that they will standardize some kind of reporting for the SMEs. And I was wondering, is there going to be a universal standard for reporting? And how are the SDG goals actually measured globally? How do we know where we are in 2030?
Good question. So we have something called on the global standards on this. I think Liu Meng may be much more current because she deals with this whole enterprise connected with New York. But on the reporting, there's something known as voluntary national reporting, which China does, Kenya does, the UK does, Belgium does, or everybody comes together at the UN at a particular time. I think it's in July or August, where they do what is called voluntary national reporting. So China, when it recently announced that by actually 2021, when they ended extreme poverty, they've already come to SDG goal number 1. The ending of abject poverty actually has had a big impact on the overall SDG goal number 1. Why is that? It's the volume, it's the numbers that is making a difference. So the number of people. But what in the last 2 years has also happened is we've had increasing number of people across the world falling back into poverty. So they came up to a particular point, and then suddenly there was a laws of lives and livelihood. For example, 1 out of every 7 Kenyans is employed in the tourism sector because of the phenomenal wildlife and ecotourism, etc., that they have. But all that suddenly stopped. So we are seeing an increasing effect of fall back into poverty. So the UN country teams in all these countries sit there and measure progress, because we are supposed to report on progress. I have to give feedback to my headquarters on how China is doing, how we are doing on the cooperation framework, how, that is why, when we had people and prosperity and the planet as the first 2 strategic priorities, it was to safeguard the goals that China has made, so that an external shock, just the kind of external shock we saw, which, all through the world's ecosystem, there was a setback, what COVID did, and, an invisible virus just set our economies into rupture. But it is now to kind of recreate that. So I would see that there will be measures that will be put in place to start, future-proofing our economies. And I think health is a good reminder that we need to future-proof our economies now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chatterjee. Is it okay? We have just 3 more minutes with you. We have last question. Thanks. Thank you so much. We have our colleague Matt from the Canadian Chamber. He's leading that and one of our community partners. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Nishta, and thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. It's been a fantastic presentation and a great conversation. I'll keep it very short. I had examples, but I'll keep it very short. To finish off, how are companies that are working on sustainability initiatives, how do they become part of the process? How do they become part of the initiatives? How do they, they bring what they're already working on and make it part of something greater as part of these goals?
Absolutely. This is why Umang is online. And Umang, do you want to just come up and show your face to everybody? I can't see you. There you are.
Okay. Yes. Thank you,
So,
Sid.
yeah. So
And
Umang is co-located with you in Shanghai. She used to actually work in New York, and we pulled her back from New York after her service there for 14 years to lead the UN Global Compact here. So she would be able to kind of give you the latest on that and come and join the Global Compact, because what it does, it gives your company a place in the UN horizon, where we say, yes, this company is meeting those standards. So there is mind you, every company, when we took the private partnership on board, we had to do a due diligence process, which is what the UN Global Compact does and gets companies together. So do talk to her, and I'm sure she'll be able to give you the best possible advice on that. But Canada's got a critical role. They were strong partners with us again in Kenya. And Canada, by the way, together with Japan, co-hosted the Blue Economy Conference in 2018 in Kenya. And because they realized the potential of the blue economy, that's why I talked about the $7 trillion economy in Africa. Over to you.
Thank you so much. On that note, I'd also like to say a big thank you to Mung. We've been in talks, and this is a great time to recap that in a month or 2 months, I guess, from now, we are actually planning an offline face-to-face gathering in Shanghai, and we would welcome all of us to collaborate, all different business communities in Shanghai. So we'll be in touch with you, with Mung as well, and we can bring these conversations, and of course, on a specific business partnership, you can get in touch with her. So I'd like to hand over for the closing to our colleague Soman from Indian Association Business Council. Thank you, Soman.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee, for your time and wonderful presentation. It was interesting to learn UN's strategic priorities and UN-China partnership, and also your Kenya experience. We also learned on how UN can be a catalyst to help business to become more sustainable, and UN being more dynamic to help public and private sector. As our events are mostly getting online, we would like to offer a digital memento as an effort of our appreciation. Please allow me to share the screen. Just one sec.
It's been a great learning today. As Soman is projecting, if anybody has any comments or takeaways, feel free to type in the chat window. Thank you.
I think the mere passion of Mr. Chatterjee is very inspiring. You can feel,
I think some technical.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
just the thought is good enough. Don't worry about it. But
sorry, yeah, but I would also, along with that, I would also like to thanks to our all community partners who allowed us to broaden our circle of community engagement and have opened our doors to benefit more and more people. Thanks to, let me see if I can get it again. No, but anyways, thanks to French Chamber of Commerce, the Expatriate Center, Singapore Chamber of Commerce, Irish Chamber of Commerce, and Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you everyone for joining. This kind of event actually takes a bit of time to arrange, and the wheels start rolling months in advance. So we are in IA, has been very fortunate to have a wonderful team. So we cannot end this program without thanking our team like Rahul, Nishtha, Bhargav, Divya. So thank you, everybody. And also like to thank all the audience members and the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. Take care.
Have a lovely day and a great weekend ahead. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and
thank you.
Soman, I've given you the hosting right. You want to still try?
Thank
I
you.
don't know why.
Yeah, I think now, I don't know why it is. Okay, let me see. No.
Because you already were the co-host. You were already the co-host. So I'm
I'm
surprised.
already a
But
co-host, but I'm not able to get the presentation. Somehow some technical issue.
Don't worry.
I think
As I
we
said,
will send.
I'm delighted to meet all of you. So have a great time and we'll be in touch.
It's
yes,
coming
we'll
to
see you in
NFT.
See you in
Bye-bye.
Shanghai.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, I got it. I got it. Can you allow me, sir?
Okay.
I got it.
Yeah, great.
I got it actually.
Fantastic. That looks great. 谢谢你，谢谢。
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
And our
Bye-bye.
and our community partners. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. You're mute. You are mute. Nishta,
Oh,
you're
I was just saving some nice comments and learnings from everybody. So
yes.
I'll talk to you on WeChat later. Somin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.